Today we are honored to welcome Christa Biegler to the show today. I'm very excited about this. She talks about everything stress related, food sensitivities, and a lot of other cool topics as well. She's the host of the Stress Less podcast, and the goal of this show is to really bring the tools of stress management, tools that we can actually apply in our life every single day to become more resilient to stress. And as the name of her show says, it's not about like having no stress. It's more about how we manage it and navigate it to become the greatest versions of ourselves. And I'm very happy to have her on the show today to share her knowledge and all her insights. How are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Happy Monday.
Definitely. So I'm very curious to hear your story and how you got into wellness and the topics of stress, autoimmunity, and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, that would be a long story. So I'll kind of like zip forward to the times where things sort of change. There's probably three main health crises, but I think we're talking today a little bit about general inflammation and stress and food sensitivities. And so about 10 years ago, I woke up one morning with kind of a rash all over my face and my neck, but it was after there was a lot of stressful pieces to that. And very often in many people's story, you'll hear where things are kind of cruising along, but after what I would say, usually a chronic period of stress, there's usually a trigger to where things kind of fall apart. So my trigger was I was chasing a couple toddlers around, I was changing careers, and we'd been at the pool every day for 5 days straight. And I am a person who is more predisposed to having certain skin issues, etc. And I thought that they were just genetics. I didn't really realize that was something I could do something about at the time. So I woke up with this kind of covering my face, and they often say that the catalyst for change is inspiration or desperation, right? And it's usually desperation. And so that kind of brought me, and it was a funny time because I was learning about food sensitivities, and food sensitivities is a whole big topic on its own. There's lots of different types of food reactions. And so to kind of package this up, I essentially started doing food sensitivity protocols for the things I had going on, but I actually made things worse for myself because I was already in a pretty depleted state. And so I actually created more food reactions. And so long story short, those experiences were all kind of created by our history of experiences, right? That's all we are. We're all just like an amass of our experiences. And so our experiences kind of allow us to shape or to do things differently. So that healing story was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, right? I wanted to hand my stuff off to someone else and have them to fix it. But unfortunately, I had trouble finding someone to fix it for me. So I had to kind of dig in and do the research, find mentors, etc., to help me piece the things together. So it took a while, but we got to the other side. And so now at this point, my passions really rely on helping people have a lot more freedom in their life around these topics so that they're not just stuck to restriction, etc. Some of the issues that kind of plague this industry, unfortunately, are really based around restriction and depletion. And so that's a very tiny short version of that particular story, but as very often all of our stories kind of change how our trajectory of our life unfolds.
Absolutely. I'm very glad that you shared that because we are like a conglomeration of our experiences, right? Mm-hmm. It's really how we transform them because a lot of us, we go through things as you did, but we have a choice to kind of grow through it or just go through it. And essentially, when we choose to alchemize that, we are able to come out on the other side and be able to service to other people, which is exactly what you've done. Yeah. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks. There was so many pieces in there where it would be easy. You know, very often it's easy to have, like you said, a victim mindset. And I'm positive I did at certain times because it's hard not to when you're going through the hard stuff. And I do remember there being times where I was trying to be grateful because I knew it would help in the future. And it was sort of funny because sometimes we don't want to use our past as a thing in the future. And so I remember I was really trying not to work with people with skin issues for a long time, but they just kind of kept coming out of the woodwork. I was working with people. I was really passionate about helping people have their best energy. The whole thing around food sensitivities and food reactions, right? I'm a dietitian by trade, so I thought that was pretty interesting, and it's really kind of come a whole 180. But it's sort of funny how your pain creates purpose, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is kind of a process as well. Like, it's sometimes hard not to be a victim, especially when we're going through it.
Yeah.
And I like to say, do the best that you can in the moment. And it may mean like you're not in a true state of power sometimes, but it's really about moving forward and making progress, right?
Yeah.
And it, like kind of get to a place of low energy to a place of high energy. And that just comes with forward progress. And it's not about being perfect, but it is definitely about making that small incremental improvements every single day. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah. It sounds like you have, kind of this manifesto or philosophy as well. And I had to develop one of those in the last few years. And one of the bullet points is like, do your best, and just let the rest be. Essentially, you can only do so
Yeah.
much.
I love that. Yeah, just living by principles, just really kind of having the system that you kind of go towards, having North Star, all these things kind of come together and make up you and just make that progress every day.
Right.
So you talk a lot about stress, which I'd like to get into first. So can you define stress and different types of stress? Because some people, they just may think of work stress. They think that they're not stressed, but they don't take everything else into consideration as well. Do you want to define that a little bit?
Yeah, we could talk about it from multiple angles. And to kind of piggyback on something you just said, unconscious stress is something that's like a thing after my own heart, essentially. Those of us that go through stress, and it's sort of your baseline, so you don't even realize it, right? You're running from appointment to appointment to appointment, so it's your norm. I think when you've got a big topic, I like to separate it into buckets. And so one way I like to talk about something is like the health triad, because often we say, oh, I've tried all these things. And I'm like, oh, well, you tried a lot of things in one corner of this triad. And so the triad is essentially, and this is kind of how I think about all symptoms, all manifestations of symptoms, etc. And so you can go about this, if I just have a little triangle, you can go about it from a nutritional chemical angle, you can go about it from a structural, physical, environmental angle, or you can go about it from a emotional and energetic angle, right? So if we would talk about it, and some of these are going to have a lot of crossover, but if we would talk about it from an emotional, energetic, I'm just thinking about stress in general. How does stress feel in your body? Is it me talking super fast? That was actually the biggest catalyst for me changing what was happening in my nervous system. Was like I was just running through like speeding unnecessarily, right? Like literally speeding unnecessarily, but also in other ways. And I would think, oh, I'm excited, I will talk fast. And I still have that tendency to do that. And I have to catch myself because it's speeding up my heart rate. It's speeding up my nervous system. It's increasing fight or flight. And that's essentially like the biological premise of stress, right? So we're getting automatically into this nutritional chemical space. I think about stress in general. Inflammation is such a like a hot topic. To me, it's a big umbrella. Inflammation equals stress to me. And so that can come into the body. Stressors to me in the nutritional chemical angle can come into the body from all different types of ways. What is going on in the gut and immune system? So again, I bucket it into sections to make it easier. What's going on in the gut and the immune system? Sometimes it doesn't look like gut and immune system symptoms. Maybe it looks like getting sick more than once or twice a year. That, just generally, stress will suppress your immune system. So that can happen. Maybe it looks like that. Maybe it looks like some digestive stuff going on. But sometimes it doesn't, because skin stuff to me is a digestive thing. It can also be toxic burden, right? So what you are touching, experiencing, whatnot throughout the day, throughout the life. What is your air quality? I know that seems oversimplified, but it can be a little bit more interesting than that, right? Like there are some really interesting things that can cause people to have overwhelm of this toxic burden system and create, symptoms like skin issues. I'll just kind of like keep coming back to, topics we've kind of talked about. So some of those toxins might look like mold impact, which can happen to anyone at any time, radon, gas leaks, like things that you don't always think of, wildfires, things that we don't always think about until it's like, oh, there's this wildfire from Canada coming down and really, really affecting my air quality. So gut and immune function, toxic burden, stress, and then there are several others. I look at it from a perspective of kind of stress chemistry, what you were talking about, right? Like kind of going through life and not really realizing. And I think about this, the way I kind of described it already, where your body is sort of holding on to stress and you may not even realize what it looks like. I think so much in terms of how it looks on the other side, right? People might get a headache because stress is going to deplete certain minerals and nutrients like magnesium, and that can create different symptoms and manifestations. So to shore it up, it's such a big question. What is stress? Well, it depends on how you're looking at it. What angle are you looking at it from? Why do we care? That's usually how we all have to set things up, is why should we care, right? What symptoms or issues or concerns do I have to make this topic even matter to me? Why should I even care, right? And so I kind of look at it from that perspective. obviously, right? That's usually when people come to other people is they've got something going on, they want it fixed, right? And so you have to kind of go back to the root cause of the root cause. And generally, stress is some version of stress, right? Whether it's a biochemical imbalance, a physical imbalance. And another one that I love is like nutrient depletion, right? And so, a real physical, tangible, visceral example of this is we've got people who are really excited about fasting, right? And it increases this cellular cleanup in the body and autophagy, and that's nice. And then sometimes we overdo restriction, and now we're in depletion, right? Because we weren't even processing through those foods in the first place. And so if you restrict for too long, now we're in depletion, and now our body is in this hyper-reactive, sensitive state. So that was quite a tangent, and it was like all over the place. So good luck wrapping it up.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of different types of stress. I think it's good to take inventory, right? Because we have like this stress bucket in a sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like nutrition stress. That can be something that people don't even think about. Like we have internal stressors on our body because we're just deficient in certain nutrients. Those are things that most people don't think about, and most people are deficient in something. So I think that's good to kind of become aware of. Like if everyone is just listening, like think about different types of stress that you're having, like different areas of your life. You may be good in something, but maybe you have a relationship that is really stressed or something like that, right? All this kind of adds to our overall stress load in a sense. Do I have that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So within that, there's something called hormetic stressors. Do you want to define that?
Yeah. Hormetic stressors are stressors on the body that they induce stress, but they can have a healthful outcome, kind of like fasting for autophagy, right? So we know that the body should have this cellular cleanup phase called autophagy. I always think about it as janitors cleaning up cellular debris in the body overall. And so I think I want to go back to fasting for this reason. The other hormetic stressors that are very popular and common right now would be things like cold plunging, et cetera, right? So these things that kind of create a stress on the body to change a biochemical reaction or a mechanism in the body overall. But back to fasting, just because I think we are still a society that's kind of into it, and I think there is nuance to it, right? And so when we are fasting, so in general, a philosophy I would have is that everyone should fast overnight. We see a lot of benefits in the research for fasting up to 16 hours, right? But what happens is, and especially with the kind of people I work with, is when we reduce certain things that kind of trigger other things in the body. So when we are fasting, we may see a reduction of symptoms. And that may tell someone in their brain, oh, well, there's something here that's not working for me, so I'll just do more of this, right? And so then you turn from a hermetic stressor, which is kind of this temporary input of a stressor that can create this healthful response like autophagy. It allows you to do that cellular cleanup overnight when you're fasting overnight. When you fast between meals, 4 hours, ideally, it allows you to do cleanup. It allows your body to focus on digestion, rest and digest, right? Instead of continually putting food in constantly between meals. And there's nuance to that conversation right there. I could go off on a tangent about some people can't even handle that part, right? So it's a matter of, can you handle those individual segments, right? And what I see happening sometimes is we do something good for us and then we do it to an extreme, and then we end up with kind of this like not ideal outcome, right? And so what happens when we are in this over fasted state, for some people, right, they're already maybe depleted, maybe the reason they tried it is because they had something else going on, maybe they weren't digesting, absorbing, maybe they were already depleted, so temporarily that is helpful. And then after a long period of time where we're doing something good for us for a long period of time, we're not kind of cycling, then it becomes this true stressor to the body. Literally, the stress is communicated to the immune system, and the immune system's like, hey, I don't even know when I'm going to get fed again. So I'm going to need to go into kind of almost a lockdown state, sort of, right? I need to kind of like conserve energy in all these different places. And what your body will typically do is, I think, rob Peter to pay Paul, right? It's always trying to keep you alive. It's always trying to help you survive and do the things that you're trying to do. So if you're constantly running from the tiger, it's constantly trying to like redistribute different workers, nutrients in different places. And so then what we see coming out the other side is sometimes hypersensitivities, overreactions to certain things, and essentially like people struggling to reintroduce anything without any flares. So that is the kind of dark side of what I see, that where that kind of stuff gets pushed a little bit too far. And now you're a man. And so I feel like this is an interesting conversation between men and women because, as far as I know in the literature, like men may tolerate some of that fasting better. But the second part of my health story was like destroying my metabolism and adrenal and thyroid health through what I just described. Like I was working for a fasting program in 2017. And so, it was all great until it's all great when you have the capacity and you're doing it right. And before you know, you're just having coffee for breakfast until noon, right? That's no longer a hormetic stressor. That's now a total stressor, right? That's now a blood sugar stressor, et cetera. And so, that was not what you asked. I went off on a tangent, liberally.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, kind of like what you mentioned at the end, we have to listen to our bodies. Like all these tools are great, but it kind of depends on our state of health. It kind of depends on other things that are going on in our lives. Just pay attention and do what works for us. And it sounds like a hormetic stressor is something that you do in the short term. And if you don't overdo it and you allow yourself to recover, it makes you stronger in the long term. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was a great summary.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a balance because it's kind of a skill to learn not to overdo something sometimes. And sometimes it takes more discipline to just recover and not go to the gym, right? It is a balance, but it's about learning how to utilize these tools in our lives. Like, as you mentioned, there's heat, there's cold, fasting, exercise, sunlight, like all these types of things. Like they're so beneficial, but keeping that balance and that progress every day is really key.
Yeah. It makes me, I'll let you go. I thought of a little bit of a tangent on it, but.
So within that as well, there's also things that kind of reduce our stress. We just talked about things that help build resilience, but there's kind of another aspect of it I like to talk about. It's like stress relievers, like perhaps meditation, journaling, walking. Do you want to talk about those at all?
Yeah, we can talk about those. So I think it's good for us to like back up big picture and to ask ourselves, do I need to add more to my plate or actually do I need to reduce what's on my plate in the first place? Because I find people get kind of stuck in capacity conversation. And so they already have a full plate and they're like, oh, I need to do all of these things to be healthy. I need to add X, Y, Z. And so when we think about these things, that may be true. We may need to add something, right? We may need to add morning sunlight because it's potentially non-negotiable, right? Like where else are we going to get this information to our eyes and our skin, et cetera, to make hormones for the rest of the day? But it feels like another thing, right? It feels like, oh, I don't have, 20 minutes, Anthony, to go meditate, whatnot, right? Because people hear all these things, their health, and we can talk about the health of them. But I think where we get stuck is, do I have the capacity? So is there something I need to remove? Or another way to think about it is, what's my best case scenario? To go back to that premise we both talked about, what can I do with what I have, right? What's like, if I could do my best and leave the rest, how could I have a 3-minute version of this healthful thing that helps me relieve stress? How could I have a 5-minute version, right? Because very often we're kind of pulled in lots of directions. So I think the first step is always an inventory, right? It's always asking ourselves, like, what is one of my favorite exercises, by the way, is to just draw a line down the middle of the paper and to ask myself, what's filling my cup and what is completely draining my energy right now? Now I'm allowing that person that's operating in unconscious stress to become a little more conscious of the stress in the first place, right? Because it might be something, not a tool that I need to add necessarily. It might be something I need to bring to consciousness that I just need to release, right? Like, oh, I'm really frustrated that I've got to start my meetings for blah, blah, blah at this time. Cause like, I feel like I can't get, I can't take care of myself in the morning, or I can't do something for myself, or I wake up reacting to kids or whatever. Right. So all of those things are real, true life things. And so I like to look at those things and say, what is there something here I can do something with? And I think doing that exercise over and over and over is incredibly helpful to kind of guide this conversation of like, what can I do next? Right. Because when I get people, to your point, to your question, when I give people these healthful things, right, that reduce stress, and it's such a giant topic, right? Like, what are the things that reduce stress? It's like, well, what's the context? Do you feel like you even have stress? If it's not even conscious to you, then then I might actually recommend something that literally stimulates your vagus nerve, right? Because like, I see it on you, you're a hot mess express. I want you to be better. So I'm going to maybe recommend something to try to give you some results. But the reality is, like, you have to get in touch with where those stressors are coming from first, right? So anyway, back to the 3-minute or 5-minute version. And I'll just use a tangible example. When I had done that energy vampire exercise multiple times, something that kept coming up to me was I just needed like a second to myself in the morning, right? Like if I could just not wake up reacting to everyone else's stuff, I did not end up in this stress response, right? Because that's kind of how our world is. That's sort of how we're programmed, right? We have all of these notifications going off on our phone, our computers, etc. And so when we just react to other people, that's stress in itself. So when we're reacting, I was feeling like I was kind of getting in this whole stress state. So anyway, to remedy that, I was like, okay, how can I stop doing that in a very short amount of time? What can I remove? Well, I can turn off notifications. I can like create some personal boundaries. But for me, when we're talking about adding things, to me, it was like, okay, if in my ideal world, I have an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours to like do things I would love to do in the morning, but not every day is realistic. Like that's not a realistic thing every single day. So what if I only have 3 minutes? What can I do? I can go outside, whether it's cloudy or not, and get full spectrum light from the sun, right? I can take a few deep breaths where I'm exhaling more than I'm inhaling to communicate to my nervous system, which will communicate to my immune system, safety. Right? Because ultimately all of these other pieces, all of this reactivity is not communicating safety to my immune system, to my nervous system. And so in 3 minutes, I can go outside, I can look at the sun, whether the sun is shining or not. Right. And I get that there's different seasons and there's different ways to consider that for like each caveat, every nuance. But I can go outside, I can look at that sun, I can take a few deep breaths. And now I've done two things at once, right? Like I've literally calmed my nervous system. I've like tuned into self, and I've stopped reacting to like I've gotten up and did something that I felt was really cup filling right away for myself in the morning, right? Maybe I have something I want to read for a minute, literally a minute. Maybe there's something positive I want to put in my mind. Maybe there's a thought or an intention I want to take through the day. So in 3 minutes, I could do 3 things, right? And we all probably could find 3 minutes, right? More so than always 30 minutes or my ideal scenario where I have 2 or 3 hours or whatnot, right? So when we talk about things to add, I like to start with that conversation. Because there's no shortage in the world of people telling us of all the things we could add to our life to reduce stress, right? And the conversation is, what's the baseline? Have you assessed the current status, right? Where do you think you are? And what are kind of the signs and symptoms and signals? And again, there's a dance here. I mean, sometimes I'm doing that with people and I see that they are completely stressed and they don't believe that they have an exit option. And when that is their belief, there is not much I can do for that person, right? I can try to help them. I can give them some survival things for their system. Literally, I can like put some nutrients in them because stress is going to deplete you of nutrients very quickly. That's kind of like how I think. I suppose I should have started there when you asked me what stress was. It's like I think of it as it's causing imbalance and nutrient depletion. That's how stress, that's the response of stress in the body. And then that is the creation of symptoms in the body as well. It's like depletion and imbalance is what's really happening. And so, to me, it's like, how do I get myself feeling even, not feeling pulled in multiple directions? And from there, I can add if I want. But instead of adding, it's like, is there something that needs to be reduced or removed before adding, right? Because do I even have room on my plate to add another thing? So hopefully that answers 100%. Your question.
Yeah. I really like how you mentioned that because we hear all these great tools and how to apply them, but we think we have to do them a certain way. Like we have to do it this amount of time. We have to do it at this point in the day. But the reality is we have to adapt it to our own lives if we're actually going to make it a practice and make it a long-term thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes a lot of repetitive revisiting, right? Because we can have a kind of an intention, but anytime you kind of try to do something new, it's very easy for us to fall into our old patterns, right? It's easier for us to fall into our old patterns than it is to start the new thing. And so I have to like put reminders on my phone, and then I have to ask myself, like, am I ignoring that reminder, right? Like, how am I prompting myself to do this little thing? And if I'm not doing it, why am I not doing it, right? And so there's so much, wrapped up into why do we not do the things we say we want to do, right? Why do we, if we want less stress, why do we do the opposite of those things? Is it because it feels like it's out of our control? And there's nothing more disempowering than feeling like our life is out of our control. And so I like to start us with what can we control, right? What can we control? Because there's a lot of layers there, right? We talked about victim mindset earlier. And sometimes there's going to be things we cannot control, or there's a but and option where it's like, I am working on this thing and I'm not quite there yet, right? It's sort of like this softening of something that feels kind of like a forced, so often we kind of feel like our body is sort of attacking us when we have symptoms. And I think it's just giving us messages. And it's like, okay, are we going to be able to stop to hear the messages, or is our life too noisy to hear them?
Yeah, it's really important to get in touch with that because we may have like a lot of blocks in our life that are preventing us from doing the thing or getting what we want. And just becoming aware of these things and focusing our attention on them. And as we said, it's not about like being perfect in that thing, but it's about progress. Like all these things are skills, like working out, fasting, like these are things that you start and you get better at over time as well.
Yeah.
And you kind of learn to listen to your body and see what you need in that moment.
Yeah. I love thinking about it as skills as well. I often think about everything hard we do is just like we're learning a skill, we're practicing a skill, and everything is hard at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. Another topic you talk about is food sensitivities. Now, this is really important because it kind of plays into autoimmunity, and there's a lot of things within that. You want to find what that is for people
Food
and how we
sensitivities?
can, yeah, and how we kind of address them in a sense.
Yeah. I think, again, this is like a pretty big topic, and I do want to actually give it appropriate definition. And so food sensitivities are a type of reaction. And my analogy for this is that you can have different Nerf guns, and Nerf guns can shoot off different color bullets, right? So you can have these red bullets, and those are going to be IgE reactions. That's not a sensitivity, that's an allergy. And we know what allergies are. We think of them because of anaphylaxis, and we think about people, their tongue swelling, their face getting red, their throat closing. Not all allergies cause anaphylaxis, some cause other things, but an allergy is a certain type of immune reaction that we think is pretty static or pretty consistent. Or if we tested over and over and over, if you went to your medical doctor or your allergist and tested that it would show up over and over and over. That's generally how we recognize universally allergies. There are other categories of food reactions, namely food sensitivities, which you just mentioned, and those are different color Nerf gun bullets. The thing to keep in mind is that we don't agree about these universally. We kind of do. We recognize conventionally that there is non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So people can have a reaction to gluten and not be celiac. And so they say, well, you're having a reaction, but you're not celiac, non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So we recognize it in that way. But in general, as a society, we do not universally agree about sensitivities. Now, a doctor may say, I see that people react to things, but they are not testing allergic, those IgE red static things. They may say that, but in general, because we don't have consistent testing around them, and here's the main thing, this type of reaction is malleable. So it actually does shift and change depending on the status of what's going on in your immune system. So when we're talking about stress, talking to your immune system, it's why it's relevant to the conversation, because stress on the immune system looks like different things, as we already mentioned, but I'll just underline again, right? Dysfunction in the gut, imbalance, kind of overgrowth of weeds, toxic burden, all of those are creating, and just general stress, all of those are communicating to the immune system. Things are not okay. And that can create the manifestation of food sensitivities. So back to food sensitivities in the technical definition and the Nerf guns. Those are other types of reactions like IgG, IgM, other T cells. So there are other types of immune reactions that are being shot from the Nerf guns, and they're different colors, but they vary. One day they might be shooting at tomatoes. The next day they might be shooting at something totally oddball different, right? So they shoot at, whereas allergies, not all allergies are the same, but there are top 8 allergens. Like we have a lot of very specific, like common allergens. And so the conversation is different. So that's, black and white kind of widely accepted conventionally and alternatively and universally, whereas sensitivities are more of they take some context, they take some definition, because we don't always think about, not your doctor may say this isn't even a thing, right? Whereas you say, but I clearly have throat clearing after I have lunch. Like, what is that, right? And so that may be a sensitivity. And so a sensitivity, again, is a different type of immune reaction being caused by the immune system in response to a food coming into the body. I like to say this is still secondary. This is still superficial to what else is happening under the hood, right? So your body is going to react to these things if there is imbalance underneath the system and the body isn't processing through this well. So it's essentially immune activation is going on when you're having reactions to foods. And then finally, there is one other type of food reaction, intolerances. Sometimes the conversation between sensitivities and intolerances gets a little muddied. But intolerances, technically by the experts, is defined as a shortage of enzymes for specific things. So the most commonly recognized known one would be like lactose intolerance, right? Like, oh, there's this milk sugar that people are not digesting, so there's an enzyme deficiency overall. Maybe you could kind of consider, it's certainly not an allergy. You might consider a sensitivity. Do I think that it can be shifted often? I find that it can often be shifted, but usually conventionally we consider it to be also generally kind of static. So there's a lot that goes into that, but in general, sensitivities are this reaction to foods that can change over time, that can be a representation of what's going on in the current immune system, that can create a variety and a multitude of symptoms that might look like digestive changes. So you're not having perfect bowel movements. It might look like skin stuff. It might look like sinus stuff, throat clearing, phlegm, mucus. It might look like, I always think of the atopic march, which is allergies, allergic type symptoms, asthma type symptoms, and then like skin or other type, like all of those things. But sensitivities can be broad and vast. It can be joint pain. It can be a variety of things. And I would say you have brought up the word autoimmunity multiple times. And I would say that in autoimmune cases, there is some cellular change or function change that happens. And I would say anecdotally, but also discussed between other practitioners, I would say that food sensitivities become more of a thing for autoimmunity than maybe some other conditions. There is some significant shifts that have happened in the immune system where food sensitivities become more important to those people, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Is there a difference between the sensitivities and allergies when it comes to that?
Yeah. So as I was saying, the allergies are the red nerve bullets. So they're IgE reactions. And so I don't know if this is what you meant, so just tell me if it's not. And then sensitivities are other types of immune reactions like IgG, IgM, T cells, etc. So there are different types of immune reactions that are not tested the same by an allergist. And so in general, if you go to an allergist, they may say that they don't even exist. The doctor may say they don't even exist. There are a lot of tests on the market that show these. Essentially, what can be happening, what is a reason that this can show up in the body, and what is very common is people will, when they do these tests, they will look sensitive to a lot of things they eat regularly. And that is because when your body is taking food in and it's breaking it down, it's like, okay, so if Anthony, you eat an apple, the apple is supposed to be broken down into tiny, tiny little pieces, right? All these little micronutrients. And your body should take those and move them all over the body and do what it needs to do with those nutrients. It's got all kinds of processes it needs them for. But if you're not breaking that down and digesting it well, and your gut is semi-permeable, aka leaky gut, it's more like fishnet tights instead of nylons, you're going to have larger particles that cross the membrane. And so you're going to have more undigested apple crossing the membrane instead of those tiny micronutrients. And so when you have these larger particles that cross that membrane, your body is trying to protect you. So the immune system's like, hey, that's not a familiar thing. Like, that's not what it should look like. So it's going to shoot off these little nerve bullets at that apple, but they're going to be different colors. They're not going to be the red IgE. They're going to be like IgG. They're going to be like orange and blue and whatever. And I'm making up these colors, but the names of the immune reactions are true. It's IgM versus IgG versus T cells. So I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's essentially kind of the difference happening in the body overall.
Yeah. When it comes to testing, it's my understanding a lot of them are not accurate, and you have to like be kind of really specific on the testing. Is that right?
It is. And if you think about how food sensitivities work, if you have this semi-permeable gut membrane, so it's more leaky, if you have fishnet tights in your gut instead of nylons, which are more semi-permeable, only small things are going to get across. What happens with the testing is that if you're consuming an apple and a pear and an orange every day, Anthony, or let's talk about something quite a bit more realistic. People are consuming gluten and dairy every day because it's like in tons of things, right? So when they're consuming those every day and they're crossing, those large particles are crossing that semi-permeable membrane, and they're not completely broken down, you're going to, in the immune system, soldiers are fighting off these nerve bullets at them. The testing is going to vary by what you're consuming. And so a very easy way to tell, is this like true or is this leaky gut? And again, this can change based on what's going on that's because of what you're taking in and like the status of that semi-permeable membrane, like what's getting across it that the immune system soldiers are fighting against. And so essentially this changes depending on the day. It can change literally by the week. So what you're eating can become the thing that you become most sensitive to at that time. So you'll see this, people will restrict their diet and they'll feel a lot better. And then they'll stay on this exact restricted diet instead of reintroducing foods. And then now they become sensitive to this diet that they are restricting. It's because they have not dealt with the root cause of what is causing that food sensitivity in the first place, which is this semi-permeable membrane. That's going in the gut. Yeah.
So if people are wondering if they may be experiencing food sensitivities, is there anything they can look out for and tend to be aware of in terms of physical symptoms?
Gosh, there's a lot of things. I think to answer this question, I'd like to encourage the listener to generally inventory the symptoms. So you can Google multiple symptom questionnaire on the internet or MSQ, and the search engines are always changing. So I used to have like a favorite that would pop up first and now it doesn't, but it's okay. So you just Google multiple symptom questionnaire, and what you'll find there is a very wide variety of symptoms based on different areas of the body. So there will be like mouth and ears. Do you have like itchy ears? Like white coated tongue, throat clearing? Do you have like itchy eyes? And there's like, it'll go by all these different systems of the body, different symptoms. And the thing about this symptom questionnaire is that they're not diagnoses, right? And sometimes we don't think we have an issue that we don't know is not normal because we've always had it, or we've had it for a long time. It's become baseline. It's like, oh, I just have that thing, right? It's like when I used to have dry skin in the winter before I had this massive flare, I was like, oh, it's fine. It's not ruining my life. It's just like, oh, I just have some dry skin sometimes. I didn't realize it wasn't ideal, right? Because I didn't know any different. I just thought that's how it was because it was always like that.
Right.
So when you're looking at these symptoms, if you look up this symptom questionnaire, there's hundreds. There's tons of symptoms that but there are common ones, right? I've talked about several already. Throat clearing, itchy ears, itchy eyes. Honestly, just fatigue can be one as well. Like feeling tired after eating is usually a pretty good sign that you're not digesting, absorbing nutrients pretty well, or that there's some kind of breakdown happening, to be honest. So all of those can be a food sensitivity. It's a matter of bringing to consciousness again, what are symptoms that are not super normal that are kind of normal for me, or that have kind of come out of, usually people are a little more triggered to change based on something that has happened more recently, where they're like, that's a little more annoying to them. Typically, sometimes we would just deal with this stuff that's kind of low grade, doesn't annoy us that much. But if you look up that questionnaire, it will have such a comprehensive listing of all these different, all of these different areas and systems that are not diagnoses. So I definitely encourage people to do that.
Makes sense. And are these something that can actually be resolved in our lives, or do we have to live with it? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that they can be resolved or reduced dramatically, because if you change the communication signals going to the immune system, then those immune system soldiers stop shooting off their Nerf guns, essentially. So, and I have a hot take on this as well, which is like, usually we don't think you can change allergies. However, if we also would say, like in the literature and in the research, 8 under 3 and under 5, the immune system is actually not static. It is actually changing. So you can technically we know that you can grow out of allergies around those ages. So if you positively impact the immune system by what's going on in the gut and toxic burden buckets, etc., you can reduce the overall sensitivity to foods of all the types of reactions, for sure. I mean, that's what I do all day, every day. I mean, that's like my purpose now is I was quite crushed by watching people restrict themselves into demise, right? Or like at first, if it's your idea to change your diet and you're excited about it, amazing, right? And that's fantastic. And you can get some great information from it. The problem is when you restrict it and then that continues out of fear for some reason for so long, where you're restricted for so long that you're in a depleted state. And so that was something I was seeing a lot of in practice over the last 10 years. And so it's caused me to say, why don't we just jump over that testing and correct the real root causes of what's going on with food sensitivity so people can enjoy as many foods as possible? Because speaking of stress, like joy and happiness, those things, like, are you really joyful? Is there real happiness in your life? Like, that's the most anti-stress thing that you can do. And we have great examples of this. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, Anthony. People kind of talk about this in the health space a lot, that they can go to Europe and eat whatever they want or whatnot. And so I was in Europe last January, and I was looking for, evidence of, like, why are Europeans healthier? And there's a lot of debate we could have about that. And I ultimately was like, they are just having way more fun than us. They're like out dancing, having fun, because they are not sleeping. They are up late. They are drinking and partying and smoking and eating too close to bedtime. And they're doing all these things that health gurus would say are not appropriate, but they're having so much fun and their life is so joyful and they're hanging out with their friends. And so I believe that reduction of stress, there goes my light. It's probably dark. I'll turn it back on. My it's also very dark here. Not very good sunlight. So I have a little light here. But I would say, like, that was the takeaway, was that their life was less stressed. They were just happier. So even though they were doing things that were not typically healthful.
Yeah, it's a great observation. I'm really glad they mentioned that, because it is very important to enjoy the journey, right? I mean, of course, there's going to be struggle points and challenges throughout it, but we have to understand all we have is right now, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there is no there, essentially. Like, you have to enjoy the journey, and, like, the saying goes, like, there's no way to happiness, but happiness is the way, right? And that in itself is a skill. So I just think that's so important, because so many of us, we try to get to this place in our lives and then we'll be happy. Mm-hmm. But the reality is we have to start right now.
Yeah. We're always kicking the goalpost all the time. And I think what you're describing right now, there's several things you said that remind me of stuff I talk about, but I kind of have a recent thing I say to people. If we would go to a room full of people and we would ask them, is anyone exactly where they want to be completely, fully, like, most of the room would not raise their hand, right? Like, everyone's got something that they're working on in general, right? And so it's like, if we always think that happiness is on the other side of the journey, the reality is that humans continue to move the goalpost. It's just how we are. We are like this. We are like, and then there's a lot of nuance to our personalities as well. But that was something I was noticing. It's so funny. Like, if you need to expose all of your own flaws or, like, look at humanity. And for me, Anthony, I love pattern recognition, and I love kind of, like, observing how humans are. But they always say, like, go into, entrepreneurship if you really want to expose your own stuff, right? Because it kind of, like, when you work with humans, it's such an interesting thing. It's so much more than the work you're doing. It's like the human experience of it as well. And so there are all of these things that are really that you just described, like cooking the goalposts down the way, right? Our tendency to negativity bias, right? To think of the negative all the time. All of those are very human. We don't blame ourselves for being human, but it's really beautiful to acknowledge them, because we often think we're the only people with these things. We're like, oh, actually, you are not. Every single person is like that. We're actually all so damn similar. We are 100%. So similar.
We think that, like, we're the only one, but, if we just kind of give ourselves permission to look at certain things, like, if you have a certain chronic condition, just look at healing stories online. You'll find many of them,
Yeah, for sure. And that's such a good point. It's like, I need to give myself evidence that I can heal, right? And so that's the point, is, like, if you don't believe that you can heal, probably no one can help you. I do have a rule, and I learned this after being, like, I think when people are in early parts of their healing journey, you often want to share it with people. Understandably, and there can be, like, a lot of beauty in that. And then sometimes you share it with people who aren't ready to receive it. And so I kind of have a rule that I don't tell people that they have a problem they don't think that they have, typically, right? I'm like, oh, I might be able to see it, but I have to be, and that's kind of a personal thing. I think there's so many ways you can go about that, but I'll bring it more tangible. My parents visited this weekend, and my mom was talking about some health issue my dad has. And I said, Mom, I don't tell people they got a problem they don't think that they have, because, like, if they don't think that they have it, there's nothing I'm going to do about it. So why would I consume my own self with that whole thing? Like, I got enough of my own stuff I got to manage and can be concerned about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the first step. Like, if we don't see it, there's a problem, we can't really do anything about it.
Right.
And that's kind of why diagnoses are kind of relieving to people sometimes, because, like, hey, this is this thing, now I know what to do, in a sense.
Right.
But also it can be like, hey, this is a thing now, it comes to their identity, and so it can go either way.
Totally. I agree completely.
It depends on the person.
Right. Like, what do you want to do with this information, right? We think it's going to be a relief, and then we're like, oh, there's actually no answers for this. Dang. Right. So like you said, it can become an identity, or you can say, I'm not okay with this identity, so therefore I'm going to do something different.
Yeah, for sure. You talk about skin conditions and eczema and things like that. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
Sure. What specifically do you want to know? Because I could talk about that all day.
Yeah, so let's talk about eczema, because I know that's something that some people experience, and it kind of ties into autoimmune disease and like inflammation and food sensitivities. So I think that'd be good.
Okay. I mean, like I said, I could talk about this for a minimum of an hour, if not all day. And I usually like type it up and all these different things, which we don't have necessarily time for today. But what I will say is all symptoms are signals from the body. And so anytime you have something, so first up, like we both said, is just awareness. And so it's like some things make us more aware than others, right? When something's going on your skin, you're suddenly like caused to be more aware than you'd want to be, right? It's like, oh, I really was ignoring the fact that I wasn't pooping every day. But now that my skin is reacting, I'm like, oh, now I have to look at this totally differently, right? And so I bring this up because, you know, it's my story. I have lots of feelings about that story. And so often, very much like my clients, they'll have other things going on, but until it shows up on their skin, they're like, oh, I'm okay. I mean, I'll just deal with this thing, right? So it's like, it kind of makes this a little bit more serious. So what I would like to say is that all symptoms that we have, all signals from our body, they're just sensitivities, skin stuff, they're all just signals. So they're a signal from the body that there's some kind of imbalance happening, maybe some sort of deficiency. And usually it's not just one. For me, I'm usually targeting multiple systems underneath the hood, which we have talked about, because that's what happens when you talk about these topics. There should be common lines that run through them. And so we talked about a little bit of gut and immune imbalance. And what can happen there, real quickly, is like we agree universally that with skin stuff, there's a staph Staphylococcus aureus overgrowth. So we agree about that, but I would say it's much more than that. You can have fungal overgrowth, you can have all these other things as well. And so that grows, your skin grows from the inside out. And so even though you can have that imbalance inside the body, that imbalance is creating, it's sort of like weeds in the lawn. The weeds in the lawn use up nutrients and they give off their waste, right? So a dandelion will give off these toxins, and those toxins have to go somewhere. They can circulate. If your toxic burden bucket's already full, they got to go somewhere. And the skin is a safe place for your body to dump trash. And so it's actually, now, I always say, like, I don't think that we're usually ready to hear this. It's almost like, well, thank God it's showing up on my skin, right? Because the other alternative is like, it could have made a tumor, right? And I could have cancer in a few years, right? Like those are true alternatives that our body could use with this toxic burden. Because that's like, we were talking about autophagy earlier. And when that whole process slows down, you have diseased and damaged cells that are building up. What do you think happens to those diseased and damaged cells? You just need an immune activation, and then you have cancer. And 1 in 2 of us have cancer. I don't say that to be fearful. I'm just really interested in it because it's like, between you and I, Anthony, one of us is probably going to get cancer statistically, right? Statistically. It's like stupid, right? And so I'm passionate about it because it's like, I want people to understand. For me, my brain thinks like the root of the root of the root, and I just want people to have their best lives, right? And so my point is like skin stuff is happening because the body is getting rid of trash and it doesn't know what to do with it, right? It's like, this is a safe place. The body gets rid of trash multiple ways. There's 4 primary drainage systems. The lungs and the air we breathe. We talked about that already today, right? Sweating and through the skin, right? That's how we excrete, is through sweating. And so otherwise it shows up on the skin. Bowels, right? What's happening in the colon and all of the packaging that happens to the liver and the whatnot. And then also urine, right? So like what's going through the kidneys and getting out as well. So skin is a pretty big topic. And I think like depending on how it looks, how it's responding, how it acts, etc., can take us down a lot of different directions. But in general, it's showing up because there's something going on. There's some kind of waste that's overflowing. It's a safe place for the body to put it. And some people like me, I'm going to be a little more predisposed to it showing up there. Whereas I've got someone that I work with, and she's going to be a little more predisposed as that showing up as anxiety. So because of like the unique makeup that we have, our symptoms may tend to present in different ways, right? And so like for me, one of my kids, like we have similar genetics where it's like, oh, we're going to show up a little more dry when something's a little off. And so to me, it's like, oh, and I recently had something pop up where I was like, I was so thrilled I didn't go into this like fear. I mean, there was, your brain wants to dance with it every once in a while. It's like wants to occasionally dance with fear around having a symptom, but it's like, oh, this is information. Turns out I actually had that information earlier. The symptoms were quieter and I was kind of ignoring them as we do, right? I'm going to ignore this because I don't have time for this right now. And then it's like, sorry, I got to be louder now. Like I actually need a little more help. This is what's going on. You got some burden buildup. You got to take care of it.
Yeah. Our bodies are always sending us messages, right? Mm-hmm. And in many ways, like a disease is kind of a miracle in a sense.
Yeah.
Because it's literally preventing you from dying.
Yeah.
Right.
That's such a good point.
We do the best that we can under the conditions that we have, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really your body's way to adapt to an unideal circumstance. Mm-hmm. That's what I find.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think I've never heard anyone say that. And that is like literally perfect. Your disease is a miracle because it's like the way your body lets you know you're not alternative dying. Like, thank you, body, right? What a dramatic thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity to heal, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say that everyone can get better from everything all the time. I think that's really up to them because I see miracles take place all the time. Like there's so-called incurable conditions.
Yeah.
That's the question you have to ask deep within yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done in my own life, my own healing journey, right? With Lyme disease, and basically overcoming that and learning all the tools of wellness, personal development, mindset. And it really becomes your journey. Yeah. And your message becomes your message. Now you become the one that people look to and they can look to you to overcome their own journey in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. Yeah. I'm still just ruminating about that statement. Like disease is a miracle. I'm like, oh, I love that. So good.
Definitely. This just came up. Like, I feel like in terms of stress and mindset and all this, like the mind plays a huge role. Do you see how people that you work with and clients, like how they're either making their symptoms worse or better potentially by the way that they're thinking?
Oh, 1,000,000%. I'm actually pretty obsessed with the concept of emotions stored in the body in general, which is like from traditional Chinese medicine. I see a ton of patterns around this, but we know that this is accurate already because we were talking about stress chemistry. And if you like look in the research, how our body perceives stress communicates to the immune system overall. And so if we are perceiving things as negative, et cetera, we're already sending messages to the body like, hey, things are not okay. Like things are not good in general. So like we have to get our mind in the right place. I actually totally, and I do this every few years. Last year, I completely just like wiped everything I was doing in practice, not because it didn't work, it worked fine, but this was the core issue I was getting frustrated with and I wanted to solve for more often. I already had like tools for it, but it was a sorrow to me that I couldn't, I was out of space and capacity to be able to like deliver these mindset tools to everyone. And so I kind of redid everything. So that way it's like, hey, every single week we can do these things around stress and nervous system and mindset. And the shift has been dramatic and transformational, not only for them, but for me as well. Right. Because it's like other, like without this as the foundation running through the thread running through, I was just seeing all of these places where people get stuck. And when you start to illuminate the fact that like, hey, we actually all have negativity bias. This is actually a survival mechanism, right? But we need to look at it as such. And we don't have to just be in survival. We have the opportunity to say like, oh, I am healing and I'm not quite there yet, right? It's like softens it instead of this constant stressor or fear or tension or even anger that runs through our body, which 100% blocks our organs from working properly. 100%.
As you mentioned before, it's like we're always in process, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that process is going to be harder than others. But the key is to stay in it because some of us, we sit on the sidelines of our own lives and we don't actually get anywhere because we're not actually in the game. And once we actually do that, we actually show up to our life. We actually learn every single day. And it's a journey. It's a process. And you get better every single day. That's the thing. Like make these incremental improvements in our lives. And from there, like we can actually achieve our goals and, be of service and live a life we actually desire.
Yeah, totally. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. All right, Christa, this has been amazing. I really, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story with us and all your techniques for healing in terms of food sensitivities, stress. I really love the stress part because most of us, we deal with these unconscious stressors, as you mentioned, and it's always going to play a role in a disease. Whatever it is, it's some component. And a lot of these things, they're just holding us back in our lives. And if we become resilient and not actually run from our problems, like we can actually hold this capacity, then we can actually kind of move within that and learn the lessons, right?
Yeah.
And being able to manage it in a way that we can understand and, just kind of move forward with courage because we have the tools to actually be calm under pressure. That's what it's all about. So again, I appreciate you so much for coming on. It's been an honor and having all your insights come on. Is there anywhere people can connect with you to learn more?
Yeah. Well, if you're listening to this podcast, I have a podcast called The Less Stressed Life. And then anything you might need is over at christabiegler.com or christabiegler.com/links.
Awesome. All right, Christa, appreciate you.
Thank you so much.